Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so we got the recording going. Okay, so welcome to the CDC 22 call. This is regarding ECIP 1049, which is the proposal change the ETC proof of work algorithm to KECAC 256. Since this meeting has been called, there's been one change to this document. Bob Somerville has stepped in to champion this proposal into a champion role. So that's been about the only change since. So I think it's important to try to understand what's going on here. So what's going on here is that we have a proposal that has been active since for about 3 years. And in the ECIP 1000, it says after about 3 years, you need to look at proposals and clean them up, figure out what's going on with them. So that's kind of what's going to be happening on this call.
Hold on. Sorry. Who is this that's speaking?
This is Ronan.
Okay, Ronan, where does it say that?
It says it in the ECIP 1000 document.
What's it say exactly?
Here, let's take a look at that. Okay, so here we go. We have the. Sorry, 1 second. I actually have it highlighted in a different document, but it was also. Oh, maybe I'll just pull up this. So can you see that on the issue 460?
I can see it, but maybe some of the folks will be just listening to this. I don't know if the recording includes video, so maybe you can read it.
That sounds good. We'll do that. Okay, here we go. Okay, do you guys see this? This is below the diagram on the ECIP 1000 document, which this is the ECIP process that we all follow with proposals. And so it says, ECIPs should change from draft or last call status to rejected status upon request by any person if they have not made progress in 3 years. Such a ECIP may be changed to draft status if the champion provides, and this is very important, revisions that meaningfully address public criticism of the proposal. So let's just be clear with this clause here is that just because this gets pushed to rejected status does not mean that the champions do not have an option to revive this proposal back to draft status. I want to be very clear on that because that might be a confusing element of this. So does everyone fully understand this clause? Was that helpful, Isaac?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, so now let's kind of look at this. I feel like maybe we should go back a little bit. This isn't going to be a contentious conversation like CDC 15 was. We had a very, very long conversation about this proposal. And you're more than welcome to go back and review that. A lot was said, not much has been addressed since. So let's just kind of look at this proposal and its current state and just see what's happened since that CDC 15 call, which was October of 2020. Let's kind of understand what was happening there. This call, somehow this proposal was pushed to last call status and made a push to accepted status. I'm not sure who the ECIP editors were at the time, but what we'll find out during this call is that this proposal isn't even in a state that would be acceptable for draft status. So,
Hey,
as we
Ronan,
look through this,
can I just jump in for a second there?
yes, sure.
On the, if you could you just go back to ECIP 1000?
Yeah.
So yeah, like I said on the issue for this meeting,
Yeah.
where I would disagree with you on process here is not made progress in 3 years.
Yep.
What I would say is the text of this specific EIP has not made progress or changed, but there has been progress, and there has been work. So what I would argue is that the ECIP text needs to be updated and reflected for that. But if you look back again at that ECIP 1000, you'll see that all of that language towards the end of the paragraph is talking about post-rejection, right? It's saying if there has not been progress in 3 years, then you're on to the reject and you're on to the, can be restored to draft if clause. So that is all after the rejected.
Right. And Bob, I understand what you're saying here, and I think that's a great point. Is that this proposal essentially has been abandoned prior to you stepping up. As we see, while you're saying that you may have been doing work in your organization, the champion has a duty to keep these things up to date. And there's all sorts of responsibilities that we'll go over in the ECIP 1000 as we go through this call. But the champion really hasn't fulfilled that role of being a champion and following the ECIP process in numerous steps, which has actually led to kind of how contentious this proposal is. And it led to the CDC 15 call that we saw. So I understand what you're saying, and that's exactly why we're having this call, opposed to just submitting a PR and rejecting it. Right? This is a discussion to figure out how we get this proposal how we get this proposal in a state that's compliant with the ECIP 1000.
Which
It's
part
not
of it
compliant
isn't
as
compliant?
it's right now.
Which part isn't compliant and isn't? I mean,
Yeah,
if we're just
Isaac,
speaking compliant,
yeah,
Ronan, can't
we'll go
he just
through.
push deferred and change it back and make a simple any kind of a touch, right, to pass this legislation?
Yeah,
Right?
Isaac, I love your train of thought because that's kind of what this call will be. Is there's a couple statuses that we can change it to. One
Well,
will be
I don't see why we need to talk about changing statuses. I mean, if the complaint is that the document hasn't been touched in 3 years, then
yeah,
can't we be constructive and just touch the document?
yeah,
Sounds like there
so
has been legitimate work
that's
happening. It just hasn't happened at this specific document.
yeah. So
Right. So
Isaac,
is
so
this
that was exactly
a
all right. So I'll just
bureaucratic
let you talk because I
hour that we're
think
going to
you don't.
spend here cutting red tape, or I don't get it.
Yeah, so Isaac, I'll let you. Are you done? So as you can see, is that that was exactly the conclusion of the CDC 15 was, this proposal isn't in a state that would be acceptable for even draft status,
What's
right? And
unacceptable about it?
it's missing all sorts of things that are required for an ECIP.
Like
That's what's
what?
not acceptable about it.
Like what?
Okay, let's go through it, Isaac. I mean, you're an ECIP editor, so You should definitely be aware of this. But let's look at.
But I think that's changing the argument. The argument is that it hasn't been changed for 3 years, not that it's not technically well written. So
Yes, and it hasn't, and that's what I'm showing you on the screen here, Donald, is that it hasn't been changed in 3 years. Look at this document. Everything that's highlighted here is the only changes. And
Wait,
Hey,
these
Ronan, I think this meeting will be much more productive if you let community members speak and just be quiet for about 2 seconds.
Hey guys, this is Alex here, original author of the proposal, and I actually have some prepared remarks that are about 5 to 10 minutes that I'd like to say, and happy to take question and answer and discuss about it later, but would just like to have a little block of time to just talk about that stuff. So let me know when that works. And
yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great, Alex, and thanks for joining the call. Okay, so let's go. Let's just look at this proposal. I feel like some people might not have even looked at this, right? So let's look at this proposal in its whole, and let's figure out where it's deficient, what's going on here, right? So what we've kind of established is that since the CDC 15 call, nothing has changed in this draft. All that Alex did was copy the old draft.
I have seen a change though, and you're showing a change on your screen. The author has changed.
Yeah, but this
the
is
objective of this call is not to check if it's deficient. That's not the issue. The issue is whether after 3 years it has to be moved to rejected because it's stale. That's the issue.
It is, and that's Donald. That's what we're doing
well
here.
Written or not, it's not even an issue because it is well written. Because if not, they wouldn't be there for 4 years.
So, Bob,
if you can hold off and let me talk, and we'll start going through this proposal.
Oh, you've been talking the entire time.
So these changes outside of Bob being added as an author are actually changes from a PR that I did in December when I requested the admins to clean up and reflect that the review period had ended on the last call status. This was February 2021. I did that, so it was pretty stale in that regard. And then I just added these few small details. That's the only thing that's happened here. So that just gives you an idea.
Okay, so your argument is that it's stale. Very good. Bueno, my argument is that it's not stale. It's not stale because the code to implement ECIP-1049 has been integrated into one of the two major nodes of Ethereum Classic. It is the most debated. I think it's even proposed. The code is or either integrated. Isaac may confirm that, or proposed for the other node for CoreGet. And not only that, but this ECIP-1049 has been the most debated debated and talked about ECIP in the last 4 years, and it's the main ECIP of Ethereum Classic at this time. The change to SHA-3, if it happens or not, which is a separate issue, is the most debated, and everywhere in the community, everybody's debating this. So that it's stale is also false.
Okay, so I believe Isaac's question was, what is missing from in this document? So what we're missing is we're missing copyrights. We're missing specifications. On the CDC 15 call, the motivation that was listed was insufficient and didn't accurately reflect the proposal, which right here, it should clearly explain why the existing protocol is inadequate to address the problem that this EPIC solves. A lot of people can't figure out what this ECIP solves. Okay, so that's been a problem with this since the start. It continues 3 years later to be a problem with it. You guys may be writing code.
It solves the 51%.
Again, the structure of the ECIP is not the issue of this call. You're wasting everybody's time.
Okay, and then we got
the issue is whether it's stale or not.
So
rationale.
I'm unclear. I'm unclear right now. I'm
It's to
very
provide
unclear because
evidence
I'm very
of
unclear. I'm
consensus
very
within
unclear
the
right now
community and discuss important
because the entire
objections or
premise
concerns raised during this discussion. Hasn't done any of that.
of this call was
It does not
based on this.
address backwards compatibility.
Ronan, I think you're not following
It is
the
better.
line of the call.
It is better to finish.
the
I'm
agenda of the
answering,
call.
Donald, you keep cutting me off, but I'm trying to answer Isaac's question where he said, he's saying, can't we just draft and fix this? Of course, you've had 3 years to do this. So he's asking, what is insufficient about this proposal as it sits to date and what needs to be drafted? That's the question that's being asked by
Okay,
Isaac.
what I'm
that's
saying
being
is that
answered.
it doesn't matter because the objective of this call is not to revise the structure.
Okay, Donald, let me just show you where it does matter. And this is why we have this document, Donald. We have this document because it does matter.
No, because you're not addressing your issue, your two issues. One is that it's stale because it passed 3 years and nobody's talking about it, which is false. And the other issue is that
No
you
one's
don't like
talking
it
about it.
because
I've said that it's a
you
highly
don't like it
contentious.
because
I've
it's going to
said that
split
it's
the
a highly
team, which is
contentious.
also false.
I've said that it's a highly contentious proposal. I've never
You
said
know,
that no one's
that
talking about
contradicts
it.
your
We're talking
argument.
about it right now.
There you got it. You're contradicting yourself because if it's highly contentious, it's because it's being debated, it's being talked about. Therefore, it's far from stale. Within your argument for calling this call, you are contradicting yourself because if you're saying that it's highly contentious and it's stale, those two things don't follow each other. So I think this call, I mean, even
Donald,
this
you
call
can look at the text for yourself. I can't make you believe what the text says. This ECIP, which is what we're talking about. We're not talking about the Discord server. We're not talking about anything else. We're talking about the ECIP is stale. You can see it right here.
community discussion is part of the debate.
Right here.
The community
Could I just,
discussion
as
is
a
part of the
suggestion-
debate and it's included in ECIP 1000.
Hey guys.
ECIP 1000 clearly says that the champion has to create debate and move it to draft if he forms a sufficiently enough support for the ECIP, and that's how everything went. So everything is fine with this ECIP. Again, the structure is something that we should not talk about because it's a waste of time because it's not the object.
You're saying everything's fine with the ECIP, and I'm highlighting that it's not fine. It's
Ronan.
not fine.
Ronan.
Can I get in a word right here? Just I have an idea. So Ronan, it seems like you're basically the primary person and who is opposed to this proposal. And as the author, I'm the primary person in favor of it. And how about you can talk for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever you need to say your bit, why you think the proposal is bad, what we should do about it. And then I'll give my prepared remarks. And then we kind of move the discussion from there. And we as a whole room can just be respectful of that. Is that, would that work?
Yeah, that would probably be more productive, as this isn't intending to be the CDC 15, the contentious call. This is talking about the state of this ECIP, and where it's at and how we rectify kind of what's going on with it right now.
So would you like to just basically go?
This,
I'll be happy to listen. And like, I suggest everyone mute and we like really give a good listen and you just say kind of what you think should happen. And then I kind of do it and then we can go from there.
Yeah, I think that would be productive opposed to just getting cut off. A lot of, as an example, some of the stuff we would talk about, Isaac was asking questions about. So,
all right, go take it away, man. I'm listening.
Great. Okay, so Alex, you hadn't been around for a while, and so this ECIP, there was no activity on it, so it appeared to be abandoned. Okay, and Bob also agreed with this and stepped in to champion that. I believe there's no question in anyone's mind that this document has not been updated in a very long time. It looks stale. So those are facts that we're working with here. Okay. The 3-year mark had hit. It looked like an abandoned proposal. And then what really triggered a lot of the review on this is that we've had a bunch of sock puppets and people coming into the Discord and fudding the network related to the merge, saying that, ETC is not going to be safe and this has to be pushed before the merge, which would be everything's been messaged in June, right? So this is how this has become a topic again, is that some sort of centralized actor is trying to push this to be activated before June 2022. And frankly, the state of this proposal as it sits in the ECIP repo is not even up to par with draft status. If you go and you look at the ECIP 1000, okay? And I don't know how it made it to draft status in the state. I wasn't an ECIP editor back then. But somehow in this state, it made it to a push for accepted status, which I think all of us can agree that this is not a complete idea in this proposal. I think everyone agrees with that. That's not a contentious thing. There's not a spec in there.
I personally don't agree with that, but
okay.
I believe it's
I didn't
completely
realize
ready
that
to
would
go.
be.
But I will go when I'll speak in my.
Okay, I didn't realize that would be a contentious thing because it's missing the entire spec section. So, and technically, we don't really fully understand what this is doing. So, but I believe that that's what Bob's working on, right? Bob, you're trying to figure out the tech on everything. That's what it sounds like. Okay. I believe I'll just assume that that's yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so this meeting was called due to inactivity and an absent champion. It hit the 3-year mark, which is what the ECIP says to review. When this hit, Bob stepped up to be the champion for it. And you have appeared a couple days ago, you appeared back on the scene. So, these things have changed since it was originally called, right? So that's
Agreed.
great.
Yes, Bob has been added as the champion recently.
Yeah.
And I would just like to say that in terms of like appearing on the scene, I actually have been in the scene. I have not been on Discord, and I'll kind of get into that when it's my turn to speak. But there has been a lot of work with the GitHub specifically, and I have been working a lot with Antoine Toulm on relaunching the Aster testnet, which we were able to, using the Besu client, and we were able to successfully have that running for quite a while. And yeah, so I just haven't been on Discord, but there's still been working.
Great. And so with Bob, even if you weren't here today with Bob stepping in, I didn't assume that you were going to show up, but with Bob stepping in, now there is a champion for this. So this is how we can get this ECIP in a better status or a better state. Okay, so let's see. Sorry, I'm just as I'm just looking at my brief notes of how we should get through this call. Okay, so I think we can look through the ECIP 1000 and see where this is deficient, and talk about how to get it back up into the minimum requirements for an ECIP and draft status. And it sounds like there's intent to update these documents, which I think would be a great thing. But I just want to emphasize that this was the same conversation that we had at the CDC 15 back in October 2020, and these documents have not been updated at all. Whereas the FUD, the fear, uncertainty, and doubt related to this proposal, to the current mining ecosystem, and to people that participate in the network, continues to this day. So, ETC won't support the ETH hash miners. That's a big one. So, we do have to address this in that sense of, if you guys are going to push a real proposal, like, let's make it a real proposal. Give it a push. It will be contentious, where CDC 15 is pretty clear on that. You guys are free to push a hard fork, a contentious hard fork. Certainly free to do that. But let's just get this proposal and draft status so we know what you guys are proposing, because right now this is very incomplete. So, if we want to go through the ECIP 1000, this will kind of be a long, dry conversation, but this is a procedural. This is a procedural conversation. It's not to debate like the CDC 15 was.
That's awesome. Could I respond to that, or
Yeah.
before we get
If you'd like to respond to this right now, that's fine. And then I just want to say where we're going next is I
Okay.
like to walk
Perfect.
through this ECIP process document so that we're just on the same page. Because if you're intending to pick this back up, that's great.
Yes.
You're that it's always encouraged to
Ronan,
participate in
hey, just let him
decentralized
talk,
network.
man. Just let him speak.
I'll answer everything right now.
Right.
So everybody, this is, I'm going to basically give some prepared remarks here. Everyone, if you can just be respectful, I'm going to be answering a lot of QA and everything at the end, and we're going to have plenty of time to talk about it. But this is basically my thoughts on the matter. And if anybody, for some reason, if you guys can stop hearing me, or if there's an issue, please at me in the chat immediately, because I just want to make sure that everyone is able to hear me properly. So with that, I'll just deliver my prepared remarks right now. So first of all, and everybody, can you hear me right now? Just to confirm.
Yeah, you're coming through fine.
Okay, perfect. So everybody, just to kind of give you background as to who I am. So I'm Alex Tsankov. I'm the original author of ECIP-1049. I made the proposal back in 2018, I believe, was the original proposal, in direct response to the 51% attacks that happened on ETC. Currently, I work full-time as a site reliability engineer at Bloomberg, so I am not active on like the ETC Discord or working with cryptocurrency projects generally, but I'm still a volunteer and I still really care a lot about the ecosystem. And really, for me, I believe ECIP 1049 is absolutely the right way to go. So I just want to also say, so that's kind of who I am. And that's why you guys haven't seen me as much on the Discord, mainly because like during the day, I'm just on my work computer and don't really have Discord on there, but I am active on the GitHub, and that's kind of where I plan to be. So the big thing for me that I want to just let everybody know is that I'm absolutely a supporter of ETC. I think ETC is the correct version of Ethereum, as Ethereum was originally intended to be, where code is law and you cannot change the state of contracts. I also believe that proof of work is a superior system to proof of stake. I think proof of work will always win out. And I actually do not think that proof of stake is going to function properly. So what I believe is going to happen is that the Ethereum Foundation is going to just keep kicking the can down the road and eventually just keep pushing this deployment of proof of stake. So I don't really consider that in my calculations. And I just want everyone to know that even if this proposal gets rejected or it gets accepted, I'm going to respect and hold my ETC and care about this community either way. So this is something that's very important to me, but I also really do value the community as well. And I think that even people that disagree with me, miners, people that agree with me, developers, dApps, all of those, I think that we all care about the success of the ETC ecosystem. So that to me is important. I want to give two reasons why I believe that we should absolutely move this ECIP 1049, which I believe is completely ready as a technical specification, to the last call state. And the two reasons why I believe that this proposal is correct is because I think that, first of all, in the short term, ETC is moving to its fifth inning right now. So our block rewards are going to descend quite a lot, or it's going to descend by 20% in the next few months. And the way that the dynamics are with the Ethereum Classic and ETH hash power is that we have a lot of opportunistic miners on Ethereum that sort of profit switch between ETH and ETC, where they will mine ETC when it is profitable to do so and mine ETH. And a lot of those miners were probably the ones they were for putting their hash power for sale online that actually participated in those 51% attacks. So I think that the original, and I think that the correct response to this sort of miner hopping problem is to change the hashing algorithm so that ETC becomes the apex predator in its own proof of work consensus model. So in the same way that Bitcoin is the apex predator of SHA-256, I believe that ETC should become the apex predator of Keccak-256, and that will prevent ETC from being 51% attacked, because we will have a dedicated miner base that will protect the network and actually increase the hash power of the network, regardless of what Ethereum does. But so that's the first reason, and that's the short term why we should switch now. But
Alex, I just want to state that a lot of these topics were discussed on the CDC 15.
I'm aware. I would just let me just finish. I'm almost done. I've just finished. So the second reason why I think that we should pass this is the long-term reason. And I personally, when I think as an engineer about Ethereum Classic, and I think as a computer scientist, I am trying to think, 15 to 20 to 30 years in the future. And I'm thinking about people's putting their life savings into this protocol, and us creating IoT devices that are connected to the Ethereum Classic protocol. And when I think about that, I know as a computer scientist that absolutely the most efficient, best hashing algorithm around is always the correct choice when you're creating financial software or Internet of Things software. And we believe that for ETC to be able to reach its dominance that it has the potential to achieve in the Internet of Things space, which is what attracted me so much into the decentralized finance space and even the mining space, it needs to choose the best algorithm available. And that algorithm is objectively Keccak-256, which is used everywhere in the Ethereum virtual machine. It's used for creating of private keys, public keys. It's extremely high performance. This is all tested. You don't have to take my word for it. There are thousands of pages of research as to why Keccak-256 is the best option right now. It's a very well-known, very secure standard, which is the complete opposite of ETC hash, which is just kind of came out of the head of the Ethereum Foundation in 2015 and is kind of minimally documented and not. So those are my reasons. And the final thing I would like to say is in terms of what do I believe that the outcome of this call should be, I believe that this proposal is absolutely ready to go right now. I think that the core members of the community, Bob Somerville is taking over as the champion. I have worked directly with a lot of the node developer teams, specifically the Besu team, working with Antoine, who has done an amazing job and is an incredible developer. We have Corgeth, a PR ready to go for Corgeth. The specification that is at the top of the ECIP itself is completely valid. So as long as you are generating your block headers using the standard way, wherever you perform the ETH operation, you perform Keccak-256, the network will work. And we have confirmed this multiple times in the Aster testnet. Which we have kept up and running, but because of the lack of clarity around this, it's a lot of work to maintain a testnet. So we really haven't been like making sure that there's like 50 machines on it and all that kind of stuff. But it is completely feasible from a block construction point of view to make this move. And my final belief is that we should basically finalize the proposal with a clear acceptance date. I believe block 16 million is the correct date. That is about 280 days from now in November. And we have 16 million as the activation date and 16.5 million, block 16.5 million as the fallback in case it does not work on that activation date. And we move this proposal to last call, where we make any technical changes that are necessary to it. And if within the week there's not any big technical changes, we move to accepted. And with a block activation date of 16 million. And, you know, here's my opinion on this. If I am going to be working all along the way to make sure that this system is going to work, but I am not stupid. I'm not sort of like selfish about this. I have no outside backing whatsoever. This is completely on a volunteer. If I see that the network is absolutely not ready by block 16 million to make this technical transition, I will be the first one to start ringing the alarm bells and saying, hey guys, we're not ready for this switch. The network is not capable of doing it. The tech isn't ready. And I'll be the first one to say, guys, we have to put it off. And if it hits 16.5 million and it still isn't ready, then I think I completely support us moving this proposal to reject it, because it did not work. And
So, okay,
yeah,
so
that's
that
my
was a lot.
remarks.
That was
I
a lot.
agree with Alex's proposal. I agree.
That was a lot, and so I'm just going to say is that this was pretty much the conversation that we had on CDC 15, and the draft has not changed since. So you're proposing that what we do is have the exact same conversation that we had on CDC 15, right?
I am
You
unaware
attempted
of
to put
what
this into last
exactly that is.
call. You attempted to put this in last call, and then it failed in that, and you've done nothing since in terms of the ECIP process. So I just don't think that that's
So my
correct way to probably take this conversation, because this conversation is more about trying to get you to address the deficiencies of this proposal. And some of the stuff that you
from
brought
a
up is
technical perspective, it's
from the
completely ready to go. I
from the
actually would ask you, tell me what in the technology,
here, hold
not,
on one second.
oh, is it, just tell me what doesn't work
So-
technologically,
So
because we
what
have
I'm going to
created
say,
a
sorry,
test net based
I
on
had
this
to just
proposal.
silence him for just a little bit. Okay, so what I'm going to say is that I think that we should go through this proposal, as I had said before he was talking, and we should look at this proposal versus what's needed in the ECIP process, and I think that will help clarify things. I think we need to be very careful when you have people that are speaking on technical issues, and then they're spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt on the network. And that
I
is
think
kind of
you're
Excuse me, I think
doing
I
that.
got to
keeps
jump in
happening
here,
here.
Ronan. Did you just
Yeah, let someone
silence
else.
Alex Sankoff?
Yeah, I did, so that I could finish my point, just like how he was allowed time to talk as well. So I was just trying to respond to that of saying, listen, we had this conversation. So this was in last call
that is a
status.
very centralized.
Nothing
That is
has
a very centralized
changed
thing.
since
That is
that
a
last
very
call status in
centralized
the
thing to
ECIP
do.
process.
That is an extremely centralized
So
thing to do. To
this is a
mute
call
somebody,
about the state of
to
this
mute
proposal.
somebody who is trying
All
to
right,
have
and
an intelligent
I'm happy to
technologic
unmute
discussion with you. You need to
Alex
be
there, but
able to speak with them
what
and
he's
address
doing
their
is
questions.
he is hijacking this to try to push it into last call again without following the ECIP process. And that's how we have this proposal that is contentious, is because it hasn't followed the ECIP process for a very long time. So I think that we should start looking at the ECIP process in this proposal and trying to get it in working order to that. So if we look at the ECIP process document, we'll see right here.
Yeah, I'd be happy to jump in. I'm a node developer, work on core Geth. I've worked on some flavor of Geth at Ethereum Classic for the last 4 years. At the end of last year, I worked on a big PR prepared by Antoine at CoreGeth, implementing the Ketchak mining algorithm. CoreGeth was able to participate on the test network, was able to mine blocks. The PR hasn't been accepted, mostly just out of editorial concern for the quality of the code, because it was built inside of a system that's not designed to have multiple engines in this kind of a thing. So I can't blame Antoine because CoreGeth just the architecture wasn't set up to make it easy to do that kind of a PR, but it was a good PR and it works. And that's progress that I've seen on the substance of the ECIP 1049 proposal. That's been progress, as Alex said earlier. That's progress that's not happening on Discord, but it happens on GitHub. Also, if this conversation is about the strictly editorial and bureaucratic shortcomings of the document, I've just produced a pull request that adds a license field with a placeholder value of Apache 2.0. Bob, if you like that, we can keep it. Otherwise, we'll just use a different license. Whatever you like, and then added a missing specification section, which I see as a should, where that's a keyword versus must for a lot of specification language. So I'm not completely convinced that every single document that's an ECIP document needs to have a specification section, but it seems to make sense. So I've added a very simple and clearly a placeholder specification section. So is there any other editorial shortcomings, Ronan, with this document that you see?
There is, and that's what on the agenda, what I was going to go through next before Sonny went off on that. So if you guys want to go through that, we can look through, and if you're happy,
Ronan, before you go on, it's Henry. I just want to add to Isaac's comment that Epic's been involved in testnet and developing the nodes. So we help Anton debug some of the nodes, and then we also wrote a GPU miner that people can mine check on testnet.
Great. So it's great. All the stuff's great, but let's look at the document, and let's look at the ECIP process and go through it. That's what we're here to do. So, all right, can you see the ECIP process document on the screen? I hope so. Okay, so let's see. The ECIP should provide concise technical specification of the feature and rationale for the feature. So I don't believe that is in this current draft of the proposal. So there's one item right there. Okay. The ECIP author is responsible for building consensus within the community and documenting dissenting opinions. This is not been happening.
Seems like there is a lot of consensus in the community, actually, because last time we chatted about this, I heard from people that it was not ready, the test nets weren't ready, but now when I'm hearing, and guys, this is the first time I've dealt with ETC related stuff in literally a year, okay? So like I was ready to let this proposal die, but it seems like people really care about it, and I've cared about it all along, but I didn't know it had the buy-in. And now just hearing based on the activity and the progress, it seems like this has a lot of buy-in, and it seems like all of the developers of the nodes are ready to implement an upgrade where it uses the Ketch Act 256. And I'm curious, is there anybody that is developing on ETC right now, developing software that is not ready to implement this change, or does not think that the ECIP is ready right now in terms of its specifications?
Well, I guess that's Alex, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he keeps cutting stuff off. We can't go through this call in this manner. Alex, you're pretty much doing exactly what you just suggested not to do. So.
Well, hello? I can't tell if anyone's here. Yeah, I mean, was there anybody that is a developing software on ETC that believes the proposal
now we'll start
is
looking through the 1049 document
on the
and
call right now.
ECIP process.
Who is on the call right now that is opposed?
The question is, what needs to be fixed on this thing, right?
Yes.
So the ECIP author is responsible for building consensus within the community and documenting dissenting opinions. This has not happened. This has actually fell onto the opposition to this, which was heavily documented on the CDC 15 call. And since then, we haven't seen any progress on this. We haven't seen anyone addressing a lot of the dissenting opinions.
I've seen pro and I've seen con opinions.
Just ETC Punk, yeah.
I'm not gonna here to disagree with that, but I did publish a consensus tracker literally while we've been on this call that tracks it. So if you guys want to take a look at that, it's open for
Cool.
review. Feel free to DM me if you see any lines that need to be updated.
Great. Thanks for doing that, ETC Punk. I appreciate that.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
so these are things that Alex should have been doing. So let's just and now Bob's stepping into that champion role. So it's great that Bob's stepping into the role. He's a fairly pragmatic guy.
I think it's great of you too, Ronan. I mean, you're helping get this back up off the ground and getting this thing looking ship shape. I think Bob will probably be thanking you before the day's over.
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, that's the point of this. Is to get this in either ECIP-1000 compliant or to move it into a rejected stack so people can focus on other things. So if it's the intent to get it ECIP-1000 compliant, that's great. That's wonderful. And if you want to set a date to try to do the hard fork, that's great. I don't believe you have consensus on that, but that's why we have a network to do this. But you can't be pushing something into last call unaccepted status that is generally incomplete. People don't understand what's going on with this proposal, so that's the motive of this call.
Understand?
So
please,
let's get it there, and we'll just keep going through this document. You guys can
Ronan,
go back and review the video, clean it up, and submit a PR.
Excuse me.
And get it right.
Excuse me.
So
Ronan. So you've been claiming Ronan.
Okay,
excuse
great.
me.
So,
Ronan. Excuse me. So
geez,
you've been claiming for weeks that this call wouldn't be contentious, and you have pulled.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Kind of working off
did
of,
not Lampus just get muted? I mean, he hasn't
another
spoken
document
at all.
here. Okay, each. Oh, here we go. Okay, so each ECIP must have a champion. Bob has now stepped in to be an active champion for that. As Alex had said, he was absent for over a year. So that has changed. So that's great. That's a great step forward. I think that PR was submitted and approved just a couple days ago. So that's great. That's what we're doing here. Get this and working on. Okay. Someone who writes the ECIP using the style and format described below shepherds the discussions in the appropriate format. This has not been happening by any champion, is shepherding the discussion, right? Attempts to build community consensus around the idea. This also has not been happening.
This is happening right now. Who is opposed
if
to
you
ECIP
want to review the
1049?
consensus issues, CDC 15 is the call to please go back and review that. This document, this proposal has not addressed those concerns in its current state. Okay, here we go. Many ideas have been brought forward for changing Ethereum Classic that have been rejected for various reasons. This is just to highlight that. One thing that we have seen is we haven't really seen this. What issues arose in its progression. So we're seeing a lot of issues arise from this proposal, and we're just not seeing.
Ronan, you should not be able to silence and mute members when they're trying to speak. Not Lampus had a point, and you just muted them and cut it off. That's wrong. Let people speak. Unmute Lampus and let him finish.
Okay, guys, this is a CDC call. This isn't Discord. I
understand.
Okay, so we're just going through the ECIP here.
You're not allowing them.
As mentioned, this was a contentious proposal for sure. Okay, here we go. Vetting an idea publicly before going as far as writing an ECIP. This is something that it didn't seem that Alex had really gone through. Saves
Ronnie,
both the potential author and the wider community time.
When they're trying to speak?
This is where it comes into negative effects on the network, is that we're seeing a lot of time being consumed by this, but we have a proposal that's generally very incomplete.
Hey, Ronan.
And then we have helps prevent too much time being spent on something that is guaranteed to be rejected. In this proposal, what's happening is that they're proposing to remove the participants from the mining ecosystem that currently exists. The odds of this making it through and the
It is completely ready to go.
And GPU miners updating the node to this proposal are fairly slim, right? So that's where a lot of contention will be. It won't be on these little developer calls. It's going to be on that economic impact and the people that you're trying to displace in the ecosystem.
Can any of those people
So
please
this is
speak up
easy
for their
conversations that
reasoning?
could have been had before
Can anyone
this
speak
was
up,
drafted up.
please?
Okay, make sure
No,
that
not draft
the
it. I'm
idea
saying
is
right here,
applicable
right now.
to the entire community. This is exactly where this proposal
Who
fails,
objects?
is that it's not applicable to GPU miners who will be essentially obsoleted, right? And then ETH hash and ETC ETC hash, same participants. Those people will be obsoleted. They won't be able to participate in this change. And so it may sound great to the author. It may sound great to Alex. It's likely not great for the entire community. And those are the people that secure the network every day. I know that there's vocal opposition from mining pools that have sworn to the non-fork chain. So these are conversations that should have happened before this proposal was rushed through kind of the process, right?
I think it's important to know who they are, Ronan, so they can be addressed and talked to.
Listen,
We can hear what they have to say.
Push it on the network. It's decentralized. You know, no one can stop you, but this is part of the ECIP process to prevent all of the contention that we've seen with this proposal.
I think
Ronan,
that everybody
I
is
do
actually in
appreciate
agreement
that we need to have consensus in the community. Again, I would refer everyone to the consensus tracker that I have just published in the ECIP-1049 sub-channel on Discord, where you can for yourself review the last 3 years, which that's a long-ass time that anyone who had an opposition statement or wanted to vote for the proposal could have gone and done it. And you can go and see for yourself exactly what the tally is. I'm not going to share it here because this isn't what the call is about. But before you begin to say that there is not consensus, I would highly recommend you go and study the data.
Thanks, ECC.
Thank you.
Punk. And please, if you could post that into the GitHub, I think that'd be really helpful. I think that's a positive way to contribute to this process. Okay, so let's keep going. Okay, once the champion has asked the ETC community as to whether an idea has any chance of accepted, a draft should be submitted, right? I think that we failed out there. It has already failed accepted status in its current form. Of course, the author comes on the call today and wants to just push the exact same proposal again. This is, again, the negative effects of this proposal is that it is an exhaustion attack. It constantly comes back up. They don't follow the ECIP process. They're just trying to push it through. They tried to push it through in the last 51% attacks. They try to do it when they can FUD the network. Now we have another event. We have the merge happening on Ethereum announced, and all of a sudden you're seeing the same push again. So
what is the merge?
So let's just recognize that for what it is. We've had Henry FUDing the network on numerous calls recently. So let's see. A chance to flesh out the draft ECIP to make it properly formatted. This has not happened in 3 years. You guys have had plenty of time. This is some of the stuff from the CDC 15.
Wait
right?
a second. So Ronan, hold on. Let's go back to basics here. Is this about the editorial shortcomings and it's missing a header section, or is this a substantive thing about the actual idea?
Yeah, this is an ECIP process to move it to rejected status.
For what reasons?
For the reasons that we're discussing right
Editorial shortcomings or for substantive reasons?
Well, it appears that there's both in here.
Yeah, which one is your reason though?
I'm kind of going through the reasons right now, Isaac, so I'll just continue going through so we can get through this. We're almost an hour in.
So what are the editorial shortcomings?
That's what I'm going through right now.
I know
to me, there seems like
we're
rough
looking at
consensus on the call.
We're looking at the ECIP process right now, and we're going through this.
Yeah, so it's missing a license section. It's missing a specification section. I just made a PR adding those. What else do I need to add to the PR to get this thing spick and span?
All right. Just keep listening, and then you'll learn what needs to just be done, and that's great.
Okay, you're an editor. Why didn't you do this 2 weeks ago instead of wasting my time doing this now?
Okay, So this is an important one where this gives the author a chance to flesh out the draft ECIP to make it properly formatted, of high quality, and to address additional concerns about the proposal, right? And so there's been plenty of additional concerns that have not been addressed, right?
What additional concerns would anyone please bring
here we
up
go.
besides Ronan? Who
ECIP
believes
authors, this
concerned?
is Alex, now this will be Bob, are responsible for collecting community feedback on both the initial idea and the ECIP before submitting it for review. However, wherever is possible, long, open-ended discussions on public groups or mailing lists should be avoided. Wow, we really failed in that one. Strategies to keep the discussion efficient include setting up a separate SIG mailing list for the topic, having the ECIP author accept private comments in the early design phases, setting up a Wiki page or a GitHub repo. Authors should use their discretion here. Okay.
Sorry,
so
can I
here's another
interrupt?
one. Here's what's
Ronin, I'm Ziogas Chris. I'm a core get developer here.
Hi.
Usually I'm going silent because I don't feel that there is a community here. And sorry for saying that. I'm trying to be part of it. But till now, for over a year being a developer, I haven't seen a community. The reason is that currently is that we have set one person at the wall and we are firing with whatever we have. Why are we doing that? Okay, I can see your reasons, but I mean, I don't blame you, but I can see that you want to follow that path. But please, have we done the same for every ECIP out there that either passed or rejected? Why do we do that now? And okay, your reasons are welcome, but I see many people that are here that usually are talking at all the Discord chats, and I feel that they can say that, okay, let's reject it, or let's accept it, or let's see if this can go on. Discussing now in this call what has to be fixed doesn't help this call. Let's decide if we want to give some room for this ECIP to breathe. Let the developers try to display some progress in the next weeks or months and call it a day. Otherwise, I don't see why we pinpoint every detail from the ECIP specification, 1000 specification, and we try to blame whoever was part of this. I'm not talking too much in general in this community, but let's please work together as a community. Let all the people be here and not be afraid of speaking, because this is what I feel. And if you check, I'm a developer more than 14 years, and on other communities I was speaking a lot, but now I cannot speak in this community. I don't know why after a year I'm afraid of speaking.
Yeah, I'm not sure why you feel that either, because you're welcome to speak as you're speaking right now. So
yeah, of course, but
participation is encouraged, and that's what hopefully those who want this proposal participate in the ECIP process and get it up to specs. So let's hope that happens, because that's what's not been happening.
Completely with Chris.
So that would be a big change after 3 years. It's been pretty much ignore and push this thing through. The other community members that are opposed to this, and wait a second. You know, this isn't a call about the consensus building right now, because we had that call.
We don't need the consensus here, because
I like my calls to go. Sorry. I'm out of here, man.
What was that?
We just read the whole document and fire one man at the corner. We don't build a consensus right here. Okay.
Right.
Let's build a consensus.
I agree that consensus hasn't been built yet. I agree with you there, and maybe you're going to try to do that in the future.
I'm out of
We
here.
have
This is a joke.
the old champion that's took this opportunity on this call to try to push it to last call and accepted status again, right? So we're just seeing the same tactics, and so rather than getting into that, a more productive thing is if Bob wants to step in as the champion, which I think Bob is a very respected person in the community. I think it's a great addition. I think that with Bob as champion, this proposal will become much more valid for review and honest look. And currently, it's not. It's
Ronan, if you really think that, then why are we having this call, man? Why are we doing this?
We're as you're seeing is that this call is actually getting them to work on it, right?
But that's not the point. The point was to reject it. That's what I said. I said this to you a week ago. This call should have had a completely different approach. It should have been much more moderate in its tone. It should have been much more cultivative of a community engagement. That's what everyone here is saying is, hey, maybe it needs to be worked on in its formatting, but it doesn't mean it needs to be rejected, man. Come on, this is pointless.
Great. Well, it'll get some sort of status change. That's for sure. So we'll work and we'll see what needs to get done on it. But we need to go through it, and it doesn't help being interrupted every little line. So if we want to get through it, we can get through it.
I have a question. Is there
okay? So
in the
it is highly recommended that a single ECIP contain a single key proposal or new idea.
Answer Alex's question, please.
So one
Wait
issue.
a second. Is there
one issue that we're seeing is that we're seeing, for instance, last week, a hybrid proof of work.
That. Ronin,
Okay.
please let others speak.
Hello.
We hear you. You made your point clear about the ECIP edit and the bureaucracy. Please let other core developers and ECIP editors to speak and share the points of view, because at our last community calls, we had debates about SHA-3 and what may happen, and let's hear them out, okay?
Yeah, I think right after we get through this ECIP-1000 process review, we'll open it up for that type of conversation. The issue we're having, I think, right now is that people are just hopping in and not really looking at what's happening here. Is that this proposal is not in a solid state. So
okay, I'm gonna.
Bob will probably take this and hopefully edit up the redraft, which should have happened, a year and a half ago, and hopefully this proposal will be ECIP-1000 compliant.
I think that this call, there's
okay.
nothing
So
for me to say.
so it should contain a single ECIP key proposal or new idea. This is recommended, and this is highlighted because we're already seeing things like hybrid proof of work is starting to flow into this proposal. That is an entirely different beast that needs to be looked at. So I think that we should keep the scope of this accurate, right? What we're seeing is that it's starting to get too broad, and that really comes from not following the ECIP process. When you don't have specs and you don't have it clearly laid out, you just keep adding
I want to just say
stuff to it.
Can you point
out
a single
this is where kind of we get into the reason why the rejected status was even suggested was it's been 3 years. And then what we're seeing here is reasons for rejecting the ECIP include, and we don't see a duplication of effort. We do see a disregard for formatting rules. We do see it being too unfocused and too broad. We see it in its current state being technically unsound. We see that the motivation was an issue from the CDC 15 call that hasn't been updated. We don't see backwards compatibility addressed. And many feel, including myself, that this is not what keeping up with the Ethereum classic philosophy of, and what I feel is regarded to that is you're trying to replace the mining ecosystem on this $4 billion network.
Okay,
and
Ronan,
so I think that there's
thank you
big
so much.
ramifications with that.
Everybody understands
and using
we all very much understand
events
it.
like the 51% attack,
really very much
using the merge of Ethereum, those type of things
nice
to FUD the network to try to push people to this using
completely counterproductive.
Misinformation campaigns saying, hey, this is an already accepted thing. We already have consensus here. I think that that's disingenuous, and we've seen that from the proponents. And so it just doesn't jive with kind of the nature of the ECIP process, you know. Anyway, so the reason for rejected status is this right here. You can read this clause. You can see how this ECIP is not up to snuff with the ECIP 1000. And if they want to fix it, that's great. That's why this call is happening. Otherwise, it just would have been a PR. This is a call to try to get it either in ECIP process compliance or throw it on the back burner because they're not doing that. I think Bob also agreed that at best, this is a work in progress. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Let's just label it accurately. Okay. All right. And then
let me chime in, please, regarding things that are missing in the ECIP 1049. First of all, it lacks a clear specification of the POW algorithm. It just says, oh, you remove the existing one and you put in KEKEK, but it doesn't say how exactly you integrate it. You can, of course, make a guess.
It does.
Sorry?
It just says it does say that.
Yeah, I can hear you, Warner.
No, it doesn't give a clear specification. It says you remove the existing one and you put in the other one, but it doesn't say clearly where the parameters go. I mean, it's not difficult to do. You basically need one line that describes that of the formula that you're proposing, but it's not there. And
what would the line be? I'm actually curious.
I posted this a few days ago on the KEKEK channel.
Because I mean, you're opposed to it. I know that you're opposed to it, Werner.
Yes.
And I think that you're saying that it doesn't have clear technical specification, and I say that is incorrect. And we have multiple nodes that are developed. The nodes are ready to
Warner,
go.
were you talking? I don't hear you if you were still talking.
What I did was I looked through the ECIP 1049 for the specification of the exact hash algorithm, and I did not find anything of that sort there. The hints of what it would be like, but you essentially have to guess in the end if you want to see what it's like, and the specification should not have you guess. And then I looked at an implementation.
I'm curious. Wait. This is interesting. What are you guessing? Because it says very clearly.
I'm getting to this. So I looked at an implementation, and there I could see how it was done, and this would have been my first guess. So far so good, but still you shouldn't have to look at an implementation because your proposal should specify what the change is. This is something that happens often, that people forget about the specification. They discuss this somewhere else, and then they conclude how they will implement it, but they forget to write the specification afterwards. So it's just something you need to do. Furthermore, for the implementation part, there should also be at least one test vector. That's a test vector in the sense that you have a header and a nonce value, and then at least provide the output, or maybe also intermediate steps if you want to, so that people can verify that any implementation actually corresponds to the algorithm as specified. I mean, there are things like byte order and so that can easily go wrong. For example, ethash has a reference implementation in Python, which serves this kind of purpose, but you don't have to go that far. But at least a set of one or multiple test vectors would make the specification a lot more useful. The next thing is that the problem statement is a bit vague in the sense that, first of all, there are basically three motivations listed. One is the attack, the past 51% attacks that were enabled by brokered hash rate. Now this has already been addressed by ECIP-1049, which enabled hash rate brokers to identify hash rate going to ETC versus to other ETH coins. Second, there's mention of the possibility of doing block verification in the EVM, but yeah. That is true to some extent, but the motivations talk specifically about brokered hash rate. So this, for example, we saw this in 2020, where hash rate was ET hash rate. ET hash rate was brokered by NiceHash, and for any purpose that people saw fit. And back then, ETC was using ET hash, not ETC hash. And so the attackers bought hash rate from NiceHash and directed it towards for the attack. And when NiceHash after the attacks, when NiceHash were challenged about that, they stated that they could not tell that the hash rate was going to ETC because it's the same hash rate. It's the ET hash algorithm, and then some can, some can't. Some can, some can't. But it's not immediate in any case, but some are fast and others are slow. Depends on the implementation of the miner. But in any case, the broker is important because if you want to use a farm for the attack, then you need to control this farm. This may mean that you need to own this farm. This is a completely different scenario where you have to make a major investment and you have a very visible asset under your control versus being able to easily rent hash rate or NiceHash for a small amount of money and then direct it to your purposes. So, NiceHash responded that they could not identify this hash rate going to ETC, and thus they could not prevent it because there could be other legitimate users for the same hash rate, and they would not want to prevent this. Fair enough. But now with ECIP-1049, this is no longer the case. Now that ETC uses the ETC hash algorithm, which is very slightly different. So we made an algorithm change, but it is one that is compatible with the existing infrastructure. And this algorithm change enables. Sorry. The change consists in simply reducing the DAG size growth. So it's not another fundamental change to how the thing works. It's simple. Well, it was a DAG size reduction by a little bit, And I pushed, when this was discussed, some people tried to reduce it by more, but I pushed towards not reducing it too much, because this could enable the development of systems that could take shortcuts. And this is combined with reduction of the DAG size growth. So it's essentially, it's exactly the same concept, but some of the parameters have been modified. So you get a very similar but different algorithm. And where was I? Yes. Then sorry, I lost. I got lost in my notes now. This was the fifth.
I believe you were saying.
It's the second motive. The second motive was the block verification, enabling block verification in the EVM. And well, we discussed this quite a bit, but in the end, no evidence came out for real life use for this existing, because if you want to verify certain properties of past blocks or so in your EVM, then you would use other mechanisms that do not require you to verify the proof of work. Rather, you have a proof that includes this, but it also is a proof for other properties, like that this block that you're talking about was ever part of the chain. Because if you verify an isolated block, this tells you nothing. It could make up a block with whatever content that's detached from the chain. But if you don't verify chain membership, then you can verify the POW as much as you want. It will not be any useful or reliable information. And the third motivation in ECIP-1049 is that it's easy for consumer processors. And again, why is this relevant? I mean, consumer processors, I mean, if we are talking about CPUs, then they're not doing block verification at the EVM level unless they're running a client. And as far as I can tell, there's no big complaint from the client side that they would not be able to find CPUs that can handle the current ET hash. So again, this seems to be very, very dubious. And the third area that is missing, it's not really spelled out like this in ECIP 1000, but it's basically it's in the compatibility part, and that's the ecosystem impact. I mean, this is not a simple protocol change where you just discuss about what contracts might break or so, but it's a profound rearrangement of the ETC ecosystem that is being proposed there, especially of the mining ecosystem. And so for a proposal of that magnitude, it should properly discuss those issues. And there are many items there. Let me just mention a few. First of all, this has already been mentioned, that as a risk of a community split between the ETC hash community, which is basically ETC as we know it, and the proposed ETC KEKAK. And this could be something like the original ETH split of ETC, or all the splits we saw around Bitcoin. So that's one thing. But then we also need to consider how a KEKAK-based hash rate would evolve. I mean, you're basically largely eliminating the existing infrastructure. You immediately drop the ASICs, and then I'm assuming here that you don't go for a hybrid approach. If the one that Henry suggested, if a hybrid is deployed, then this would add another intermediate phase. But assuming there's no hybrid, then you would immediately eliminate all the ASICs, and you would obsolete the GPUs in the medium term. And so this raises a few questions. First of all, who will build an efficient KEKEC infrastructure? There are about 10.
Can I have
an estimate about
Warner?
$10 billion in ETH infrastructure at the moment. This is with Ethereum and Ethereum Classic. Of this, we can expect at least $1 or $2 billion. Well, all GPU miners are capable of running also of running ETC hash. Some of the ASICs are capable of running the ETH hash algorithm, the ETC hash algorithm, and maybe some others that exist in the ETH hash algorithm family. But again, members of the same family are not identical algorithms. That's
It was ASIC resistance, not ASIC proof. So you've brought this up numerous times. You know it's disingenuous. It's far more competitive on ETC hash and ETH hash between GPU and ASICs. So just let's stop that BS.
Yeah,
Well,
Alex,
of course,
for someone
of
that's
course.
proposing the algorithm change,
This has been
do your homework.
This has been known for a very long time. I mean, Alex, you've been there in Vancouver when I presented our ASIC design for mining.
Right. Well, you're on the CBC 15 call, Alex. So you know, I don't think anyone's denying your ignorance.
It should be more than half.
So there are definitely ASICs on Ethereum and ASICs on ETC, and the exact I don't know the exact numbers. There are estimates. Henry proposed so that there might be something like 15%. Other people say it might be a bit more.
Yeah, I think it's 15 to 25%. I didn't have a number, so I just picked the low end of the number. But Warner, just to address your point about infrastructure, with the GPU miner that we wrote, people can easily take the code, take the KEKEC code, integrate it into their, ETH hash miners and mine KEKEC that way. And additionally, there's a lot of bit streams available for KEKEC and SHA-3 that you can buy and work on the FPGAs. There's a whack of FPGAs that Xilinx is selling, for mining ETH hash and ETC at this point. You may remember the C50 crypto board, and there's a lot of those boards around. So I would just take dispute with the comment that we abandon the infrastructure. Long term, we'll probably do. Medium, short term. It really depends on the transition and how people migrate to new infrastructure.
Well, the issue that I'm talking about is that you're obsoleting a considerable amount of investment, and you need to replace it. So, as I said, about the estimate of the value of the ETH hash infrastructure is about $10 billion. I think, Henry, that actually came from you, that number. And if we can make an estimate that maybe at least $1 or $2 billion worth of equipment will, after the merge of Ethereum, will end up on ETC. And this already includes that some less efficient equipment will stop mining, and also equipment will go to other coins if ETC is not profitable enough. But still, there should be enough for about $1 to $2 billion worth of equipment. So this is basically an anchor for the mining system, and you need to replace this with an anchor of comparable weight in order to secure the network. Because if you only have a very small investment in your mining infrastructure, or you have very inefficient miners, but more efficient equipment is available, then you can very easily be attacked. And also the question is, so first of all, you need to explain who will invest all this, and also second, how long it will take until attacking a KEKAC-based Ethereum Classic would become economically infeasible. Because this is basically a period of weakness that this introduces. And now, next, there's also the possibility.
Warner, I'll address the comments in the GitHub, but just for the record, here is that most of the equipment on the ETC is old equipment. So, the useful life of a 6-year-old GPU is questionable at this point. The life of E3 Bitmain ASIC is questionable at this point. And then the third point about being easy to attack or not easy to attack is Kachek does use more power, so it makes the attack much tougher to do economically.
Yeah, when more miners coming over from ETH hash to ETC hash with the merge to proof of stake, wouldn't that also achieve what you're talking about there, Henry, in terms of the difficulty will rise and some of the older equipment might be obsolete, but those are just kind of the dynamics that are already in place on this network?
Yeah, it's already in place on the network. You look at it and say that the earnings on ETH are like 4.2 cents per mega hash, and the earnings on ETC after the fifthing is about 2 cents. I presented all this data so that the community could have a relevant discussion with the facts rather than making opinions, right? So that's
right. But as an example of like with Bitcoin mining, when it becomes unprofitable for miners, they don't just adjust the whole protocol for it. Some people turn off machines, difficulty it changes. There's natural forces that kind of fix that. It's not, hey, let's just change algorithms due to perceived new miners coming or more hash rate coming into the ecosystem. So trying to think about that in a logical approach.
That's a long discussion. I won't respond to that.
Yeah,
I
agree. I don't. We've had plenty of discussions here, so I don't want to get too deep into the woods here. That's part of the consensus building and all that stuff, right? And that's where we're seeing a lot of friction. So this call is more about how this ECIP is kind of incomplete. It's definitely not ready for accepted status. It's not very clear, the total proposal. And so that's kind of where this is at. And Bob, as the new champion, will I'm sure that he'll do everything in his power to try to get things in order. We just haven't seen it in 3 years.
Right, I understand. I mean, I think this is productive from the standpoint it helped get the ECIP in better shape. And then, Warner, thank you for your comments. I think that, by all means, rather than to discuss this elsewhere, let's get it on the ECIP. Let's get it updated so that, it's all in one central spot. We're guilty of doing too much and, not updating the ECIP.
Just 1 second here. Can anyone maybe from COP tell us the latest status on development for Checkak, because we haven't had an update since I think it was implemented in Geth. So it would be good to know where we are now and if there are any plans to continue the proposal.
That would be Bob. Bob, if you wanna just talk on that, you probably know more about it than anyone. Bob, you're muted. If there might be a push to talk issue. Okay, brother, maybe we can go back to that. Maybe he has a toddler at the house, so maybe he had to run.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Oh, there he is. There he is. Great.
Yeah. So Kekak support was integrated into Bezu, and support for the Astor testnet. There's a pull request on Corgeth, which Ontan had created. It hasn't been merged because there's, as Isaac said a bit earlier, there's some sort of architectural stuff on Corgeth that was not friendly to having different types of mining, so that needs further rework. I mean, in general, where things are sitting, so Alex has been saying, that we're good to go. That's not my my feeling. I think that that there's further work to be done, specifically on transition planning, from a technical perspective. We've had testnet up, but we haven't done a transition on a testnet. That's sort of an unknown, and there's further work to be done on mining side support. But
Great.
yeah,
And,
I mean, like I said at the very start, I think this ECIP is in draft status, and I think that's entirely appropriate for where it is. There's remedial work to be done on the ECIP text itself to reflect the work that's happened in other areas. Sorry, to reflect the work that's happened elsewhere. But yeah, that's really my position.
Great, thanks.
Is there any concrete? I was curious actually, and I just want to make clear that like Bob and I were entirely separate. I don't work for the ETC cooperative, and Bob and I, we just agree on this proposal. But I am curious, Bob, what do you think we should do going forward? And from your position, is there anything that you would like to see in the proposal, or anything specifically as a new champion for it you think that should be changed or done?
Primarily to make the text reflect the reality of where we are and the work that's been done, and from there, I mean, we need to continue on that thread that we'd had of really working through that testing phase. I don't think we're in a place where we can that we can move to accepted or really say, well, hey, are we moving forward or not? Have we got consensus? That there's technical work to be done before that, essentially.
Great. I appreciate that input, Bob. And I think that kind of needs to echo through the ETC ecosystem, because we've kind of had some pushes that this needs to be implemented in June 2022. And, people kind of fudding the network on calls and such. I had heard your community call 05, and it sounded like you didn't think that this proposal was possible before any of the merge, and it sounded like you also were tracking the progress of what's going on with Ethereum. So I just kind of wanted some clarity on that of like, are you thinking that you guys are going to try to push this to accepted status before June 2022 and pre the Ethereum merge to proof of stake and what people are describing as the flood of new hash rate over to ETC?
I don't think it's likely, no, that
Okay.
it could go before June.
Okay, great. It's just nice to have
there's a
clarity on
difference
that from the
between
technical side.
Wait, I would just like to say that, and my opinion, I believe that we are ready to move the proposal to last call, and any technical concerns. And honestly, Bob, I think it is ready to go. I think that having worked on the nodes themselves, I think the nodes are ready to do it. I think that we should basically put a line in the sand on an activation block. And within the last call period of about maybe 3 weeks or a month, we identify any sort of technical discrepancies, of which I do not believe there is any, and I'm happy to address anything that anyone brings up, but I would like to go on the record and say that I think it is completely ready to go, and I think that the transition is actually not going to be an issue like you're saying, but if it is, I'm happy to address it. But I think that we are ready to move it to last call and to put a line in the sand and say, at a particular block, this will be activated. And then we as the community start building the nodes and getting it merged and actually building the permanent test net. And if we get to that point,
again, Alex, you proposed that back in September 2020 and that failed. And so that's kind of what we're trying to prevent here is how bad that push for accepted was. It resulted in a very contentious CDC 15 call. I think with Bob, I think what we're seeing a more pragmatic approach to this. You've said that this was ready to go when a lot of work hadn't even been done. So and you're biased, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. This is your proposal. This is your baby. But for the $4 billion network, I think we need to have a more pragmatic discussion here. As Bob mentioned, the consensus building isn't even there. So even if you try to push it there, you're really risking a contentious hardcore.
Why is there PRs to CoreGet and Besu right now that are working and ready to be merged? And you're saying that the technical specification isn't ready. That's not true. It is completely ready to go. But you know what? It's not an issue
Bob,
because I'm not going to hang out in the Discord. So
I mean,
Bob is the champion. It's his thing to push through the finish line.
It's unfortunate that you just are trying to be disingenuous with the facts, and we just have to look at this pragmatically. And you're just not. So it's great that Bob's stepping in because I think that many would agree that that this, his approach sounds more reasonable. That's what we're seeing from the outside looking in, is that it doesn't appear to be ready, and that likely June 2022 would be very rushed. And I think everyone on the $4 billion network is, if you guys are going to try to do this, just please do it in a very safe and responsible way. And I think that Bob was answering that.
I just want to put on the record
that's his intent. So that's great as a champion. So
I don't think June 2022
and I still don't understand, Bob, how my question is back to the consensus stuff of how this is going to make sure that the idea is applicable to the entire community with the effects on the current mining ecosystem, as we're seeing in this graph on my screen of how the ETC hash ASICs are going to be obsoleted by this change in favor of these other ASICs, but then the GPU miners will also be obsoleted. And so I think that this is kind of a big thing outside of the technical specs that we really need to figure out here. And I think Henry gave an honest attempt on the hybrid proof of work. I think that it's in its infancy. It was just proposed last week, but I think that that's something interesting to explore in an ECIP that might work in conjunction with this. And that is part of the ECIP process says, if it split it up into multiple ECIPs so it can start being reviewed and discussed. So I hope to see that as we talk about transition, if we're going that route, and how to not disenfranchise the current mining ecosystem.
I think that Alex should probably address the concern as to, is there a security concern? Is there security risks involved with moving to Catch Act 256 without sort of a hybrid transition period or not? And I think if that concern could be addressed in the proposal sufficiently to the point that, a majority of us could agree that, yeah, probably that risk is mitigated, then I think that it probably would be fine to approve it and move it into final call. But I think that should be specified and that concern should be addressed in the proposal.
I'm actually in agreement with you on that point of it not being the most secure way as well as Alex. So I like to see that we have that. I am concerned, I think, with that cutover of how you displace the entire mining ecosystem. And I think that really comes down to what needs to happen with this. Make sure the idea is applicable to the entire community. Just because you're a developer and not a miner, I think you do have to have empathy for the miners of the network, and you really need to take all of the people in the community into account. And I just don't see that necessarily in this proposal. But again, call is to update this proposal to get it into a spot where we're actually talking about something that is relevant. So I hope that in the end this is productive, and I hope that we start seeing a lot of the changes that have been suggested and vocalized on this call actually in the ECIP documents.
I have a question for you, Alex. So proof of work, it's about nodes, mining, and everybody knows that the mining business, it's a well-established business, right? You have a big ecosystem on Ethereum that may move, some of it may move to ETC. Do you have any proof that the current SHA-3 tweaked on ETH hash can be broken, or why should ETC say no to ETC hash, right? Why does the standard, the SHA-3 standard, is better than what we already have?
proof of work of the chain within microseconds compared to how long it takes to do that with ETH hash. So performance and security are the two reasons why I think that the standard approach, which is ECIP-1049, SHA-3, Ketchup-256, this entire ecosystem is the correct choice for proof of work. Because I'm thinking about it 15 years in the future, 100 years in the future. That is my perspective when it comes to the system.
Okay, thanks.
I'd just say on that. Sorry, Bob. Here.
Go ahead, Bob. Sorry about that.
On that performance piece, I don't think that's at all important, actually, Alex, because the primary constraint that you have is actually I/O. It's not compute speed. So, I don't think that's really relevant.
Well, I mean, we can discuss offline, but all I'll say to that is that when you are syncing an ETC node, which I have done many, many times, of every time you receive a block, so if you're replaying the entire history of ETC, for every block that you receive, 2 milliseconds of CPU time is spent performing the proof of work check of that. And that, at the very least, if you imagine our network getting to 100 million blocks in the future, that amount of time spent just on keeping this ETH hash, which is basically you have to keep this garbage data. It's data that has no purpose besides just making it difficult. You have to keep this garbage data, and that eats up RAM. And I think that that's completely unnecessary for the protocol. But I'm happy to discuss offline or further with anybody about that.
Okay. I just kind of wanted to, while we're kind of going through this, there has been a lot push to try to get this activated by June 2022. I don't really see that's going to happen. It sounds like Bob agrees as the champion of this. We probably should just discuss that that this wouldn't solve any of that, the fears of the flood and all of that that misinformation that's been circulating on some of the recent video calls. So we should just try to get that out there. I think one of the problems of this proposal is the misinformation that ends up getting spread about this and trying to get people to accept this due to fear. I don't think that that's a very appropriate approach. And I hope that we don't see that moving forward.
Get Ronan. Hey, get Ronan. Do not attempt to speak about shutting this down because of fear. You are attempting to shut it down due to fear. I have addressed this in the GitHub pull request on this call. You have attempted to hold this community hostage by threatening us with the claim that you have anonymous.
All right. So that's kind of the stuff that we're talking about, is that we're seeing a lot of noise, and it's good to have this technical call.
No, Ronan. No. Let him finish. No, Ronan. Let him finish.
You interrupted Ronan. Let him finish.
Hey.
Let him finish. He has a point. Let Punk finish. Let him finish. This is a good point.
Go ahead.
With threats of contentious chain splits, retaining the chain ID. These are not things that are community oriented. These are not things that are consensus oriented. They are divisive.
I think they are.
They're antagonistic. No. Go and read the GitHub that I posted. He deleted this comment that he has met with the development team under the guise of redundancy that in effect is attempting to take over the network. He claims to be decentralized, pro-decentralization, and in fact is propagating the exact opposite.
Okay. So kind of back to the agenda here.
Let me add to that point, because you basically dissed what I provided to the community, which is I was trying to provide information so that the community can make a decision, right?
Yeah, but you are doing it under the guise that we're going to be attacked if we don't put this in.
No. I presented information to the community so they could have several scenarios.
Yeah, and you are spreading FUD when you're doing some of those things, Henry. And so it's much better to have the technical conversation and be real about it. As an example, like, GPU miners are going to be fine on Keck 256. that's simply not the case, and miners aren't stupid enough to believe that.
It's a bad look. It's a bad look to say that.
Yeah, and miners aren't stupid enough to believe that, right?
Exactly.
You're, who are you trying to misinform, right? It's not the miners because they know that it won't be competitive, but you're trying to misinform other people that are less technically savvy. So
make the argument look bad when you do that kind of stuff.
Let's try to stop that type of stuff, especially flooding the network on every call.
Henry has outlined that GPU miners are dead in the water no matter which route we take. Whether we maintain status quo and the merge happens, GPU miners are not going to make money.
That's just because you're saying that the price won't go up.
Listen to me. If we move with SHA-3, there's an
you're
opportunity,
painting a picture
not
of
a guarantee, but an
static
opportunity
future
for
where
GPU miners to continue mining profitably for some period of time. Some people here project that it will take a significant amount of time. Werner himself has suggested it takes longer than 1 year to produce ASICs. But you know what? The merge might happen. Bob seems to think it's imminent. GPU miners are walking dead men as we speak. Okay, no matter what.
So this is kind of the
math shows it.
kind of the
That's
fear
just fear mongering.
That is fear mongering. Kind of talking about. So this is what we've seen. So it's good to hear that this proposal likely won't have that big push in June 2022. So I think that was the fear of a lot of people of an incomplete rush proposal due to fear, uncertainty, and doubt, which is meeting resistance. So that's great. Alex, I'm not sure. I think if you want that IO comment, if you have any input, I think this is a great spot to really vocalize that real quick for anyone that's listening. I mean, if you prefer to just write your response to that with Bob later on, that's fine. But I noticed that you said we'll take this offline, but I think this is the proper forum. I think it's great if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically, I think that it's a small pedantic point. So I don't think this is like a huge actually because the IO is fine. ETC Punk made a really good point. What ETC hash, what ETH hash is you are attaching gigabytes of data. Gigabytes. This is not a small number. We're talking about tons of data being attached to a hashing algorithm, which doesn't make any sense from a computer science perspective. So I think that, we gotta focus on what works from computer science and say, why are we attaching all this data to a hashing algorithm? No other hashing algorithm that is used outside of the crypto world ever does this. And I just don't think it's a good idea. And I think it introduces so many performance issues, at the very least, just RAM. Like, why do you need this much RAM to be able to run a hash function? I think that doesn't make any sense. But I mean, yeah, to me, it's a smaller point, and not like, it's like a matter of, it can be figured out via like trials. If we were to trial a entirely Keccak, network with the same data as the live one, and then we can see the milliseconds it takes to perform a block verification and find the bottleneck there. But I think it'll be pretty clear that the Keccak one is going to absolutely blow the Ethash system out of the water in terms of how high performance it could get in block verification. But that needs to be experimented without it.
The purpose of attaching the memory was originally to make it impossible to make ASICs. This was driven by the bad experience from Bitcoin, where the various generations of miners, first CPUs, then FPGAs, and then several generations of ASICs were obsoleted by subsequent developments, and people just got tired of investing into what looked like a sound infrastructure for mining for a time, and see the investment destroyed within an unexpectedly short time, because some new development came out. So many people were strongly against ASICs, and still allowed out today, and because they think this was a very unhealthy development, because you have a performance gap in terms of cost per hash of a factor of maybe 1,000 on Bitcoin between CPUs and ASICs. Maybe it's even larger now. And this resulted in Ethereum trying to make ASICs impossible. Now, if you the issue is that they didn't really understand hardware that well, and because if you understand how ASICs work, what is possible with ASICs, then you realize you cannot make it impossible, but you can make it difficult, which is almost as good. Because what happened on Ethereum and also Ethereum Classic is that while there are ASICs, they do not enjoy a vast performance advantage over GPUs. Basically, if you have a top-notch GPU, then you have a performance advantage with a top-notch ASIC of maybe a factor of 4, which is very, very little compared to the 1,000 or even more that you have with a compute-bound algorithm like SHA-256, or you will have the same situation with SHA-3 or KEKAK. So that's, and this not only did this work, but it also worked over a very long time. I mean, we now have basically the third generation of ASIC miners on ETH in the ETH family, and still this gap hasn't really changed much. So this is excellent because it keeps the playing field very level. That's so, and this is the purpose of this memory component, to prevent one technology racing ahead and obsoleting all the rest, and possibly also opening the means for doing attacks. I mean, if somebody makes an improved ASIC, maybe they see more value in selling it to a criminal organization than putting it on the open market. So there's always that risk. So, and by keeping the playing field level, nobody can race ahead that much. They can be a little bit more efficient. Usually it also means that the miner is more expensive, and but they don't. It's not a game changer, and that's quite important. What I would say.
Except your cost per hash comes way down in ASIC, so that's probably getting beyond this discussion. Happy to document this and update my papers.
Well, cost per hash is lower with ASICs. Yes, I mean that's the whole purpose. Basically, people optimize to pay to consume less energy per hash, and thus pay less money to the electricity company. And of course, with the constraint that if the hardware gets outrageously expensive to make, then this doesn't work. So if you have a miner that consumes half as much energy, but you have to pay, let's say, $100,000, and the competition gives you a less efficient miner for $10,000, then you have to do the math. I mean, will you ever be able to cover this huge difference? Those $90,000 of difference in the lifetime of the miner, and you may find that this doesn't work. But if they are reasonably closely priced for the equipment itself, then you want to have the miner that is more power efficient. But as I said, the difference is not that huge with ETH, with the ETH family. So this is ETH, ETC hash, UBQ hash, and I don't think there are any others, but maybe there are. And the difference would be huge, though, is huge with hash algorithms that only consist of computation, so that have no memory component. So that would be in Bitcoin or also SHA-3, KEKAK. And I mean, ETH is not the only one that has there's a memory component. There's of ProcPro, and there's Equihash. I think the there's Kappa, which is a variant of proc power, and then I think that there are a few other algorithms that basically do the same thing. That they have a significant memory component, just to keep things more level.
I think that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, just my last question. This one is for Bob or Diego or someone from Co-op. Will Co-op still pursue checkmark mining if the current hash rate will increase by, I don't know, 7x?
Is this are you framing that as after the proof of stake merge over on Ethereum?
It can happen before.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, people could turn over before that event. I think that was a question to the ECT co-op team or Bob as the champion.
Cody said on Discord earlier today that there's sort of two different things, right? There's the technical work about support for KEKEK mining within the clients and transition. And then there's the question of activation. And the two are independent. So yeah, I mean, I would say, I don't know. We've got technical work to do.
Right. Okay.
Bob,
I mean, and
just
sorry,
just to cover a little more on that. Alex has proposed particular blocks as a first step, and I think that's the wrong way around. It's actually something that was a problem with Phoenix. Was that the way that we tried to sort of coordinate that hard fork was to sort of agree a target date, and then doing the technical work and the work on the test nets to try and achieve that. And I think what you really need to do for success for any given EIP or ECIP is you need to get the thing to completion before you even think about activation. Going into saying, right, this is going to be the hard fork and this is going to be the block for the test nets, and then so much later we're going to do activation. I think it's a dangerous approach, because if things go wrong during that testing phase, or you find specification errors later, you've already committed yourself to a timeline. So that's problematic.
I actually agree with that. I think that's a great comment, and I think it also, the network changes. We're in a very dynamic space, and just setting dates like that arbitrarily is a bit dangerous. And great thought on bringing back up the Phoenix stuff. I do remember. I do remember that, and that was quite an issue. And I think we were all happy that we found issues with that in the testnet, and making sure that the core devs have plenty of time to iron that stuff out is a really responsible way to approach these type of things.
Yep, and I just want to say that, yeah, absolutely, Bob, this is yours now to work on, and I 100% trust you that when you think that the network is ready, we're going to be ready to do this. The reason why I want to set a block is because I am a full-time employee and I am very busy. And I think there's a lot of people in this network that want to work on it and want to make it happen. And I think it's technologically possible to get it done by 16 million. And I'm ready to drive like hell to make us get to that point. And I think it's going to work, and I think it's going to be amazing. But I 100% trust your judgment, since you're plugged in full-time into the community and you're going to be the champion of this proposal. So I just want to say thank you as well for backing me up on this and becoming the champion.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and you know, as someone that's kind of vocally in opposition to this proposal, I also want to thank you as well, because I don't think that you guys are working on this in vain. I do see that in Ethereum's classic future, at some point, maybe it's not next year, like Alex was suggesting with that activation, but you know, there will be a need to have a transition plan to a new algorithm at some point. So I think some of the work you're doing really has merit and long-term value for the network as a whole. So I just want to clarify that of just because I'm in opposition to this specific proposal and perhaps how it may affect the mining ecosystem right now doesn't mean that I think that you guys are not doing valid work. And I think these discussions are really, really helpful for forward thinking on the network.
Hey, Git Ronan, if you didn't think they were doing valid work, then why did you procure private backdoor agreements with developers at ETH Denver this last week in an effort to sort of have some kind of leverage in case this proposal went through? I think you need to clarify for everybody here on the record, if we do take this to a vote and it does get approved, what exactly is your response going to be?
Yeah, I think if you attempt to push a contentious hard fork on the network, that the non-fork chain will be fine. There are plenty of people that have sworn allegiance to that side of the chain, and so I think everyone kind of recognizes that this is a contentious proposal in that regard. And it sounds like Bob.
So are you planning to
Bob
take the stance of
taken
divisiveness?
that
Are you planning to take the stance of dividing this community, which you consider to be resilient and have made that claim many times? Or are you planning to
ETC Punk, I understand what you're doing right now. This is a technical call, so you can leave those comments and no one.
He's pretty sincere. I agree with him.
Yeah, I would say that logic is really there. So.
Okay, so if that's the case, then I think it's fair to say that you are planning on basically championing your own hard fork split of the chain if this proposal goes through. You are not going to participate honestly in the ECIP 1000 process, which says if there is rough consensus that is the decision of the community, then you know you're acting in divisiveness and you know basically you're the one that's antagonizing.
I think it's just important to note that the current mining ecosystem would not be abandoned if someone tried to force a contentious proposal and contentious fork on the network. So I think it's important when you have people like yourself that spread fear all over these type of calls and have tried to hijack every single forward thinking. The question is answered that the GPO and ETC hash mining ecosystem shouldn't be afraid of someone pushing a contentious hard fork on this network.
I don't believe that they are afraid. If you look, there's actually been polls on Twitter for miners. They're in support, majority support, Catch Act 256. That's documented in the consensus tracker. You can go through and verify, validate all of the claims made in the consensus tracker.
You know, the best part about a decentralized network is that hard forks are a feature. So
yeah, absolutely, and that you're free to do that if you want to. But I just want it to be clear: you're pretending to support.
You are
Bob,
free to do it. You're proposing the change, ETC punks. So let's just not twist that up. So, anyways, back to probably the agenda to make this a positive call. Bob, I am about I think we're about halfway through that ECP 1000 process of things that kind of need to be addressed. I have more highlighted. We can go through that. We're rounding about 2 hours on this call. It's clear to me after this conversation that your intent is to update the draft, which I think is great. We can go through these other changes that need to happen to get this thing in working order if you want. We could also just assume that you guys are going to put the effort in to update the draft. And I think that this was the expectation back in September 2020. It just never happened. And this has been a stale proposal since in terms of the ECIP repo. It sounds like you guys are doing work on the backside, but not everyone knows that. And so my question for you would be, when can we expect you to update this draft? And then if it's just not updated again, you know, maybe we move it to rejected status, and then when you guys do update it, you know, it can go back up to draft status, right? There's, you know, this is just a procedural thing, despite what, you know, the contentious remarks from some of the people. So that's the nature of this call. So do you have an intent? When is the intent to update this draft and get it ECIP 1000 compliant as the new champion?
Yeah, I don't have any particular timeline in mind, but it will be over the coming months.
Over the coming months. Okay. So would you like to maybe like set a date of you know, hey, in a couple months from now, what, like 3 months? So like let us know what you need, but give you guys a time to kind of get this in order. I know that it's been 3 years, but if you'd like to do that, and then if it's not in order, then you know we just reopen the PR and just put it to rejected status. It's not really a big deal because you can resurrect it at any point, right? You just have to, with the redraft, you need to materially address the criticisms of this proposal, which generally speaking hasn't really been happening by Alex. And so as a fairly pragmatic person, I don't think that we're going to run into the same issues. And I think that this proposal will be updated and be compliant with the ECIP process, you know, once your guys have enough time to do that. So would you need, you know, do you need 2 months, 3 months? How long do we need?
I'm not sure offhand. I mean, it depends a lot what everyone is doing on the team. We're still in the process of planning for this year.
I think we should also submit a list of all the issues that we see, and then only then Bob will be able to make an estimate of how long it would take to address them. Or decide which ones need to be addressed or not. Maybe it would even make sense to split this ECIP in 2 parts. One with just focusing on the technical side of how to implement a KEKAK in the technical framework, and another one that would talk about the change of the mining infrastructure, referencing the other one as the implementation, but then discussing the motivations and the impact on the existing ecosystem and so on. So I think it would be premature to ask for a specific schedule. This will take some time, inevitably.
Right. You know, I'm in agreement on that. I think before this call was held, we didn't have a champion to this proposal that was active. I think it sounds like we have some work being done by Bob and his team, and I think that, you know, it sounds like their intent is to update the proposal and bring it up to compliance. So in my opinion, you know, I think that we can maybe leave this in draft status while they have that time. And then I think, you know, I don't think it should take you longer than 3 months to at least do that type of stuff. I'd love to start seeing some PRs on it, especially after such a long time that was given since the CDC 15 call. But I understand what you're saying. You're saying you're trying to balance, like Mystique, for instance. You guys were just working on that. So I definitely understand that, Bob. I just want to try to make sure that there is a good effort to get this proposal up to the standards, because right now it's not.
I mean, the other thing I'd highlight on that is, you know, with concerns about, you know, vocal noisiness and social stuff around this, there's no way to control that, right? You know, just trying to solve that piece within the ECIP process is just not possible. So that's the other thing I'd highlight is if, you know, if you like, you know, the ambiguity is causing, you know, noise, Yeah, it is, but that's not going to change.
Yeah, I actually I agree with you that, there is some sort of concerted effort to try to hijack other calls and such. And we can't control that in the ECIP process, but it makes it impossible to talk about this proposal in a technical way when it's not updated and not complete. And it just continues to be brought up by a centralized group, it appears. Um, so, anyway, I hope the effort is there to really clear up the specifications of this. I think Warner brought up a great point of maybe this should be cut up into a couple proposals. I think that aligns with kind of the suggestion of the ECIP process. And I think that would at least remove a lot of these talking points of the people that are spreading fear, uncertainty, and doubt across all of our calls and having a negative effect on the development process on Ethereum Classic.
Yeah, I just want to jump in and actually say I think that is an intelligent way to approach it. So I think that, one direction that this can go, and I need to sleep on it to really think it over, but one direction I can see this going is that ECIP 1049 becomes the specification for how the Ketchak 256 network will run, and then a separate ECIP becomes on this date, on this block, with this transition parameters or something like that, is when a switchover occurs. Because I think that no matter what, whether or not you agree with the switch or disagree with the switch, I think everyone here agrees that there's a lot of really useful computer science and actually like specifications for how to do this switch. And I think that we can definitely push that to the finish line without having to necessarily set a block where it gets turned on, or that can be the next step.
Yeah, I agree with you, Alex. I think there is, and there's long-term valid work that's being done in terms of looking at a transition plan in the case that this network ever had to change algorithms. I think when you look at a long life span of a network like this, that is highly probable in the long term. So I think that it makes sense to start splitting stuff up like that. I think Henry's proposal, for instance, for the hybrid proof of work, you might not agree with it, but I think that is a valid ECIP to, in its own right, to look at, and in terms of transition plans for the future. And it doesn't necessarily, it's kind of like algorithm agnostic stuff, right? At least in my opinion. So
I have to take a closer look at it, but yeah, I'm actually going to be dropping off of the call right now. But
yeah,
even though we disagree, I think there is some room for improvement, Ronan, in terms of like the beginning of the call and with muting people and stuff like that. But at the same time, I think you did a good job for organizing this together and getting the stakeholders and actually driving this process forward and making sure that we do keep going, because I'm 100% in support of that. I'm a busy guy. Everyone here is busy. We need progress. We need to see movement happening, and I agree with that. So I think this was a good call, and I think that if anyone, it's really in Bob's hands as the champion now, and I want everyone to know that yeah, I'm going to be taking a step back, and we'll work on this once it's moved to last call and accepted. That's when I'll really get into the weeds with the code and making this happen. So, thank you.
Great. I appreciate those positive comments. Yeah, it is tough with a contentious topic like this. And I'm actually of the opinion that we should probably start wrapping this up as well. We're almost to 2 hours and 30 minutes. And I think the general thing is that Bob is taking this over. I think that's extremely productive for this proposal, and I think just for the process in general. And I think he knows that he should likely start updating this document and getting it going. And so, I'm of the opinion that this has been productive, and I look forward to seeing the formal document get updated and having a lot of the stuff that was talked about here in the actual proposals, and perhaps even seeing a few other proposals where stuff is split out to keep things focused in terms of discussion, like the implementation being a different proposal. So So anyways, that's kind of my opinion on it. I mean, we could go through these other things that need compliance, but really we can start addressing those with comments on the actual document that Bob will be updating. So, I mean, if anyone else has anything to say, that one ran long.
Thanks again for putting this together, Ronan. Really pushing SHA-3 forward. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Cheers, everyone.